What's going on, everybody? Friday night. Hello, hello. It's been a long week here in northern Michigan. Unfortunately, summer is wrapping up, and you may see me hitting the mute button a little bit, to give the cough cough without blowing the headphones off people who are the audio listeners. Thanks for joining, and I'll try to spare your eardrums. But we are here. And we are live, and people are already showing up. Amy, how we doing? It's good to see you. And Joey, all the fam is coming in. So it's been a good week. I got to do an extra show with Grizzly this week. If you didn't see it, check it out from Wednesday. It's always fun to share time with Grizz and Mike, and they're just good, wonderful people. So it's always good to share a little screen time instead of just saying hi in chat. But it's always nice to see people in chat and talk to everybody. So, personal note, I am officially unretired as a personal trainer. So I didn't think that day would ever happen, but it's here. So we are doing the personal training out of the gym here in Traverse City, Battle Fitness. Going to be looking at doing some online stuff. I am not training bodybuilding athletes or anything like that. I am more interested in helping people who genuinely need help. So if it's a weight loss issue, health issue, things like that, I am not a doctor. I would strongly advise working with your doctor if you decide to hit me up for some coaching. Michelle, how you doing? It was good to see you on the show the other night. It's nice to put a face with the name now. Holly's here. Thanks, Holly. Of course, everybody remembers Holly and her awesome stories. We got to get her and Mel back on here for maybe we can convince them for a getting ready for fall now that summer's over. Soccer moms are going to be heading back to the gym, moms with football practice and everything for kids. So maybe we can touch on that. Also Bigfoot fitness. Hey, there's, a little fitness involved when you're got to go out looking. You want to make sure you don't roll your ankle. If you do, you're, properly prepared with certain things like splints and stuff like that in your pack for an emergency pack. Make sure your cell phone's charged, as I proved 2 weeks ago by going out and getting lost. So thankfully my cell phone had service. I was able to put in an address and hang my head low as I walked out tonight. So let's go through and get everybody's comments up. I don't want you to think I forget this part because you guys and your comments are what the show's about. More or less interaction. It's not just me, it's a team talking about it. We're having conversation. So Michelle says, yeah, Michelle, it was good to see you. A lot of cool stuff I didn't know about you too. So if anybody missed that show, you need to go back and watch it. Michelle, was it on Tuesday night, I believe, or was it Monday? If you could throw that in chat so people can check it out, because it was great. So yeah, interesting topic tonight. I was on another podcast over on Midnight Lycanthropy, and we talked about feral people. And while watching YouTube, Mount Shasta keeps popping up in my feed lately. It seems like, every place in the U.S. has kind of got its own thing that's known for. You got Skinwalker Ranch, you've got Waverly Hills Asylum, Michigan Dogman, although I'm the, prefer the Bigfoot. August 12th. So there you go, folks. Check out August 12th show and check Michelle out. Great show. My vlog, Sonny, nice to see you. I hope everything is on the mend and things are going well for you. So we've missed you around here. And yeah, so Mount Shasta has a little bit of everything. I mean, people missing. It seems like it's not. I believe it was second or third on the list. Alaska was the first, with people missing per year, and it's an astonishing number. I was blown away by the amount of people that go missing in Alaska. I mean, they were talking 16% of the population goes missing every year, which is mind blowing to me. I don't, it didn't say how many of those people were found, but that's a scary amount of people going missing every year. So, and Alaska got its own Alaska Triangle, as the shows have seen. So, another one that has lots of stuff going on. But Mount Shasta is kind of unique in that, heck, it's even got its own hidden city. How many? I don't know too many of the other places that claim that there's actually a hidden city inside that mountain. So, and we're going to touch on that. We'll start with kind of why Mount Shasta is so important. And what I thought I would do tonight too is, let's see here, open with, some of this stuff is pretty easy to find, and the way the world's getting, folks, really need to look at your locations before you head out for vacation. For things such as this. There was a show that's blowing up Netflix right now and Hulu that I will find the name of in just a second. Sonny's just busy with appointments this month. Thank you for asking, Brian. Of course, your family, we miss you. Glad you're here. And the show was about a person who stalked a girl for 13 years. And it happened, let's see, Netflix stalking movie. I can't find the name of it, but the person who did the stalking actually got their idea, because they did wind up kidnapping this girl. He stuck her in a box, and he got the idea from a series called You on Netflix. So, be careful. These guys are out there. Anyway, back to the good stuff. Mount Shasta it's renowned for spiritual significance, geological features, and connection to paranormal activity, which is where the interesting part for us is. It's considered a sacred mountain by many, with hidden legends of a hidden city beneath the surface and extraterrestrial accounts. It is also known for lenticular clouds, beautiful scenery, and as a popular destination for hiking, climbing, and spiritual retreats. So, as far as being a sacred mountain, Native American tribes have been there as a sacred site, believed to be inhabited by spirits and deities. There's even a legend of Native Americans have been there roughly 13,000 years. And my blog Sonny, is a good series. So yeah, just like anything else, it can be abused. That's what the hard part. The Native Americans actually talk about a people who were a little browner than them and a little shorter living in Mount Shasta, which is probably where the hidden city comes from. But once the Klamath tribe came in, they didn't really care to share the mountains. So they, gave these people the boots. Supposedly they left and went back to their home, and supposedly that home was Atlantis. So there's a little ancient lore for you. There's believed to be spiritual vortexes up there. Many believe it's a powerful spiritual energy vortex attracting those who seek enlightenment and connection with nature. And you can see something that big. As we know, the bigger the mass, it actually creates gravity. And The energy within, depending on the type, emulates at a certain frequency. And, gravity's type of energy, frequencies are energy, depending what the vibration is, depending on the place, and probably depends on the type of rocks and crystals and everything. You can see where that could be just a plethora of paranormal stuff going on. You're supposed to be able to root chakra. There, some New Age beliefs consider it the root chakra of the world, suggesting it's a focal point for grounding and primal energy. I would think some of the bigger mountains would be known for that, though. The ones that are a little bit taller. Hidden cities. Legends persist about a lost city, often referred to as Telos, existing beneath the mountain, inhabited by a highly advanced civilization. Mount Shasta is a massive stratovolcano, one of the largest in the Cascade Range. It's had been host to several glaciers. It's been known for its lenticular clouds, which were formed when moist air is forced upwards and cool, sometimes resemble flying saucers. I don't think that's the case for all the flying saucers activity. You got volcanic activity, UFO sightings, otherworldly phenomena, spirit seekers. I mean, you name it, it's there. No, the crazy part is, and this is where some people, I have to argue a little bit, because you're going to hear numbers that people give for people who go missing in the national parks. Personally, I want to know where they get those numbers. If anybody in here is connected, my vlog Sony 11 says there's portals too. Yep, heard that. I mean, it sounds like it's got everything you can just about think of. But people go missing in Mount Shasta all the time, and it makes you wonder why. There was even something as what was it, June? Somebody just went missing here. So some residents are drawn to the area's spiritual significance and availability of resources, with a segment of population living a hippie freestyle lifestyle, sometimes in vans around Mount Shasta. Now, let's talk a little bit about the past people who are supposed to have been there, where all of this is supposed to could have started, not supposed to. My vlog's something very paranormal, because you get everything. You get Bigfoot, you get all kinds of UFO sightings, and like I said, how many places? This is the only one I know that supposedly had a lost city inside the mountain. Mount Shasta is considered by several Native American tribes, and is also associated with, I hope I say this right, Lemurian city of Telos. The Shasta, Wintu, Akanami, Ashtawaji, Modoc, and Klamath tribes all have historical and spiritual connections there. So you've got all these different tribes, all these different, what's the word, not necessarily religions, but traditions and different ways of praying, and all this energy in one place. And places absorb energy. That's how we get residual hauntings. So imagine with all the people that have disappeared up there. Let's see. But back to the lost city before we get to the number. The Shasta people in particular consider Mount Shasta a part of their ancestral lands. Additionally, some believe in the hidden city of Lemurians inside the mountain, who are said to be a highly evolved spiritual race. So, is that where some of these things are going? I mean, this mountain has been, celebrated by so many different cultures and religions, and right up until the point where the Europeans came through and kind of decided to take it for ourselves. But there's still luckily all kinds of ways to celebrate their own traditions there and have their own land and things like that. You know, the Shasta Indian Nation has a strong connection to the mountain, particularly in the Kikasiki area, which was once a village along the Klamath River. They are working to reclaim and revitalize their cultural heritage, including the Copco Reservoir area. Traditional stories passed down through generations speak of guardians inhabiting the mountains, including Chief Skell Gamakam and a creature called Gagme, Bigfoot. The mountain holds spiritual and ceremonial significance for tribes with legends of its formation and inhabitants. Telos, the concept of Telos, is a Lemurian city inside Mount Shasta, which, if you believe in cave systems and stuff, is probably where you would be able to find that. But through time and landslides and everything else, maybe that city's finally been cut off. Believers in the Lemurian legends say the Lemurians can be contacted through spiritual practices like meditation, and they can use crystals for communication. Lemurians are often described as tall, light beings with a high level of spiritual output. So, is that what's happening to people? Are they going up there and maybe a civilization they're wandering into? And so kind of like Hotel California, you can go in there, but you can never leave type of thing. Or, there's talk of Bigfoot up there. And there is a tale and picture to go with it of a person went on a hike in 2007 and a guide told them that he wasn't going to camp because after he took this picture unknowingly, he heard something, he snapped a picture. Now this comes off Reddit, so of course we got to be a little careful with it. But to me it looks like it could be a Bigfoot there. It almost looked like there's two of them maybe, or it's because of the way I see a creature with the eyes. You can see the arms and the hands reach out, and then you see a darker image that looks like he's bent over, like he's looking for food, or maybe he was naughty and about to get spanked by the adult here. But to me, it looks like there's two. The reason why I think maybe it's on the hoaxy side is because the one bent over looks like it's got boots on. If you look straight down the dark leg, so maybe that's just dirt, but either way, this person who took this picture, believes in Bigfoot and now refuses to camp up there. So what do we make of that? As far as the number of feral people who go disappearing, and maybe not feral people, the number of people who go missing could be UFO, could be Bigfoot, could also be, to me, most of them are probably just because of getting lost and then nature takes its toll, because you're talking cliffs hundreds and thousands of feet high. You're talking people falling into crevices, maybe they break a leg. Maybe they hide from a bear. I recently saw something flipping through on YouTube with the fact that they found a skeleton 30 feet in the air. To me, that almost sounded like the person climbed up there and then was so afraid to climb down that they just eventually passed away, stopped breathing in the tree, and that was where they were stuck. And that was how the person got put so high. Again, that's a guess. So maybe I better flag this up here a couple times because I am going to be throwing my opinions out. So let's show this at least twice. One more time for the people who want to slow it down and see that These are my opinions and my opinions only. I'm making educational guesses, and that's the root of it. A lot of it is an educational guess, because the fact is, as far as people missing in national parks, there is no real number. Oops, that number of people in national parks. We want missing in national parks. So every year, it's a rough number, and these people come out and say it's between this and this. They don't know. I'm sorry, but they don't, unless they're talking to somebody who's high up and not willing to go on the record. It's a crapshoot. The only thing you can kind of go by is the fact that how many search and rescues get called. There is no single official annual figure for missing persons in U.S. national parks. Data can suggest from individual parks, thousands of people are involved in search and rescue incidents. So that's all they're going off, is the number of people that are reported missing, with thousands more reported missing within national parks over several years. For example, Yosemite and Grand Canyon National Parks each have hundreds of open missing person cases, with Yosemite having the most open cases on the National Park Service cold case list. Vast majorities of incidents involve people who are quickly reunited with their families, though. And the crazy thing was, from 2004 to 2008, there were 1,018, but in 2024 alone, there were 2,014. So anybody who's telling you they know the exact number is just guessing. They're taking somebody else's word for it. No report. What's the other thing if you take them? UFO abduction. People see a lot of UFOs up there. That's a possible one. The fact that, we did a podcast on midnight lycanthropy, feral people. Now, do I think there's a whole bunch of these? And I distinguish feral people as different from wild people. Feral people are more of the people who were like in Jungle Boy, where the hunters actually found the boy who was being raised by wolves. He couldn't speak, he couldn't walk, he hopped around on all fours. He actually barked and growled just like the wolves do. So to me, that's feral. Wild people are people who lose their humanization and sociability. They just want to be alone. They don't want to deal with people. And they're even a step further than being just off grid. They resort to primal instincts where they lose their, I guess you would say, morals as far as what they're willing to do and not do. They strictly, each moment is based on survival for that moment. So, which is where, people will get wild people and Bigfoot mixed up. My vlog, Sony David Paulides and Can-Am Missing Project, is a good watch about national park missing people. Yeah, I like David Paulides' work. I know, I'm going to get heat for this, but I don't care, right? We're open on this channel. That's the way we're supposed to be. I like what he's done. He gets a lot of heat for it. And of course, there's going to be questions about some things. And that's just the way it is. People have questions about what I do. People have questions for Ron Moorhead. And a lot of that stems from the fact that we just can't take people at their word, because of the fact, people like to hoax. Even people, disappearing in Mount Shasta for a while just to get some attention. So, that's just things we have to deal with. But yeah, David Paulides is great. And, you know, there's a story from close to Mount Shasta that actually backup's kind of what I think is happening. I think you're getting more like wild people, maybe even cults up there, which is why one or two people go missing. Maybe they're disappearing for ritualistic reasons, we'll say. Or maybe I can go with the word, listening for Creed's song for the algorithm, My Sacrifice. Could be happening up there with those as well. But there's a story about a hiker. This is close to Mount Shasta. It's not exactly Mount Shasta, but it does bring up the fact that Mount Shasta is also has the people in white phenomenon going, where people are being followed by these people in white. And Mr. McBallin does his own story. Good song, Brian. Of course, hey, anything Creed puts out, you got to roll with it. So Creed has got some great stuff. But in 2008, a hiker named Matt, and this is long, so you're going to get the abbreviated version, was hiking through a dense forest in Northern California. He was on a trail. The end of this trail, it was a 1,500-mile trail. End of it came out somewhere near Mount Shasta, one of the surrounding parks. And when he decided to stop and make camp for the night, he walked several hundred feet off the main trail into the forest, where he found a small clearing, set up his tent, sleep for a few hours. But he would wake up because he thought he heard something outside his tent. There were no windows on the tent, and it was totally pitch black outside, so he can't say anything. He's just laying there listening, trying to hear what's going on, and then he hears it again. It's the sound of footsteps approaching his tent. And there's an ad in here, so I'm skipping the ad. So anyway, he hears the footsteps coming up to his tent, and then he hears nothing. So he lays there for the rest of the night with his knife right on his chest. Now, he knew there were cougars and bears and things like that, so he was pretty well prepared for anything. He didn't take any objects that project little pieces of lead, but he had quite the piece of steel with him. And so the next day he got up and he was looking around, and his food was gone. So he, just wrote it up as, oh, I'm sorry. That day he had seen hiking up the trail two people in white sitting on a rock, and they just stared at him. And so he thought it was kind of odd, but he, just kept his head down, and then he would glance up, and those people were just staring at him and staring at him. As he got to the midway, felt kind of weird. So he just awkwardly smiled and said hi, and they didn't respond. No expression on their face. And they watched as he walked right past him. Felt really uncomfortable because they knew they were definitely staring at him and did not acknowledge him. The fact that it was on the Pacific Crest Trail, people go days without seeing other people, so he didn't really think a whole lot of it. He just thought it was pretty rude that you haven't seen somebody for a few days and they didn't say hi. He figures, whatever they're doing, it's not his business, so he just kept walking. So he keeps walking, goes to make his camp, walks about 300 miles off of the campsite. Sorry, we have a little co-host who wants to sit up here and say hi and listen to story time. So they stole his food, and the next day he wants to keep walking. And as he's looking around, he realizes that there are prints around his tent. Oh, look who joined us. Speaking to the man. Hello, Grizz. So they found his prints. As he looked around him, realized that these prints went all the way up to his tent, around his campsite. And Matt is looking at all these crazy trail of human prints all over the place. He's thinking to himself, how is this possible? I went to bed and it was already pitch black outside. I got up basically right at sunrise, so it was still dark outside. And that people were walking all over and cutting my food down, somehow navigated 300 feet off the trail. Linda, yeah, Bear's a little cutie. So in the middle of the night, someone navigated all that distance, cut his food down, and ran off with it. The only logical conclusion he could think of was the two people in white. So after that, he saw where he left the trail. He found where they had waited until he fell asleep and then snuck out and robbed Matt. And he suddenly realizes that maybe they're still around. So he thinks he's still being watched. So he began whipping his head around, looking in all directions, expecting to see the man and the woman in white poking out from behind every tree. But when he looked, he couldn't see anyone. So he quickly packed up his campsite, walked as quickly and calm as he could toward the trail, and he kept walking, thinking to himself, these people are going to jump out from behind a tree or grab me. Finally gets to the trail, looks around, doesn't see anybody for a while, and then starts hiking again, for several hours, periodically looking over his shoulder. The dense forest opens up, beautiful sky. He found himself more at ease, decides to camp again, and was super hungry. And then he clearly needed more food than he had, so he knew he was going to have to go to one of these little towns. But at least the white people in white were behind him. So he gets up, and the next couple of nights are pretty quiet. And then he decides to one night, he goes into town and camps. And at that point, he's debating whether or not to have his family come get him because the people in white shook him up. And what he does then is he decides, nope, I'm going to finish the trail. I only got 150 miles to go. And he turns around and hikes back. Next 2 nights are restful. But then the third night, he lays the sticks around his tent. He's listening really intently, and footsteps are getting closer and closer to his tent until they stop right next to where his tent. They are literally about a foot away from him. And so he can't see anything. He's just listening really intently, and then he hears whispering. But the whispering's not coming right from the person at the tent. And the whispering's coming from the forest in all different directions. So now Matt doesn't know what to think. He hears them begin circling his tent, goes in different directions of the whispering, and so Matt is so terrified he's frozen. He knows he's holding a knife but won't be able to do anything. He's just petrified. And then all of a sudden there's silence, as if whoever is out there is still out there, and they're just standing there waiting for him to come out of the tent. But so in the morning, he jumps out of his tent, ready for anything. Doesn't see anybody, but now is having true nightmares. So he starts running back toward the trail. He runs toward the trail and decided that, yep, my first encounter, they stole food. That's creepy. It makes sense. But the fact they followed him to his campsite after they stole his food, and then a second encounter that happened the night before didn't make any sense again. And he's constantly looking for anybody who was following him, but nobody was following him. So anyway, this winds up, he camps one more night. And at that point, a flashlight pops out. And he has to hide under a log from these people in white. and luckily they don't find him. What they turn around and walks away, and then the next day he sprints almost 20 miles in one day to a town and calls and has his family come pick him up. So they pick him up. He tells the sheriff about it, and then he keeps calling back because all his gear's out there. You know, want to know if they hear any more. And he's like, well, we've had reports of people taking the people's gear, but we haven't had anything as crazy as what's been happening to you. So, you know, there's the case of the people in white up there. So you've got Bigfoot now, which I just had that picture up that was supposed to be taken by a trail guide. We've got rumors of ancient civilizations in the mountains. Now we've got people in white, and there's even more Bigfoot going on out there as well. And UFOs. Let's see here. Let's see. First encounter. I was halfway up Mount Shasta, gasping for air and questioning my my life choices when I spotted him, Bigfoot, just standing there. He locked eyes, froze, couldn't believe myself, then disappeared. That was 2006. So is it Bigfoot that's helping with people? Is it the UFOs? Let's see if we can find a good UFO story off that. There is, because some of those UFO stories, like I said, it's called the from the cloud formation. You could be convinced that there's some UFOs up there, but when there's bright lights that are actually coming out of the mountain, you know, that's supposedly from the inner city of Telos, that's a lot going on. And if so many people are seeing it, how can you deny? If it was one or two people, you're like, you know, wouldn't believe it too much. But the fact that so many people are having these, and how can you discount them all? Because even if 99% of them are just trash, you have to give them some credit, because if 99% are trash, one's true, then they're true. You know, Susie Guzman, over 25 years ago, I made contact and had wonderful UFO sightings at Mount Shasta. I kept coming back for more until I finally learned that it was because we were all connected. And all I have to do is carry Shasta with me. So if you happen to be far, you can just feel it in your heart. You know, and if you go to the Mount Shasta website or Facebook page, there are people looking all over who want to camp in these places and have these paranormal experiences, which I don't know, but I don't think I want that necessarily coming up and petting my dog while I'm sleeping, even though he's sleeping in my lap right now. But, you know, what does everybody in the chat think? Besides, like I said, for me, most of those people are probably just, unfortunately, nature. You've got your bears, you've got your mountain lions, you've got accidents, you've got people, I hate to say it, hiking in places where they just shouldn't be hiking due to physical limitations. You know, if somebody 3, 4, 500 pounds rolls an ankle out in the middle of nowhere, that's a big problem. You know, that's, imagine, and depending where they fall, trying to get a stretcher back there and get them out in time. If they're spewing bodily fluid from an artery, you know, that's not going to happen. So what else can be going on? Everything's going on out there. You know, nobody knows the exact number of people that are missing. because all we can go by is the number of people that are reported, and then they go look for. How do we go off that? A lot of people, you know, take off on a whim for a hike who live in the area. Actually, I like that. We'll just leave that up there because to me, if you talk about wild people, I think because of people's limited frame of reference, wild people and Bigfoot kind of get tossed in together. They kind of, get grouped in like people telling the difference between angel hair pasta and spaghetti. To me, it looks like the same freaking thing. Tastes the same. Don't get it, but it is what it is. Sasquatch and feral people tend to, unless people really know what they're talking about, tend to get overlapped as well. Especially when you get into the Appalachians, which, even in the Appalachians doesn't seem to have as much crazy activity as Mount Shasta. When's the last time you heard about a lost city being in the Appalachians? Or the fact that, according to Klamath uh, lore, that there were actually people there before they got there. And Klamath people were there for over 13,000 years. Michelle Wolfong, I agree, it's dangerous to hike when not prepared for emergencies. Yeah, Michelle, uh, and I hate to say this, but I've done it way too many times, and I almost paid for it a couple weeks ago. If I had rolled my ankle or something, that would have been a nightmare. Even though I was fairly close to civilization, odds are I would have got found at some point. But these people are miles away from people, and nature doesn't forgive mistakes. If you go out there, you're not prepared, you don't have your water, you can't just dip your bottle in the creek and stream unless you happen to have a filter for that water bottle because you get dysentery and everything else that you can wind up getting. So, Tom, how we doing? Tom to Ellie. So yeah, you got to be prepared for these things, and even as prepared as you can be, nobody's going to be prepared when they see those spinning lights in the sky, or the fact of you see an 8-foot hairy Bigfoot wild person, come out, because according to, some of those Native American folklore, it's, the Bigfoot were coming down and grabbing women for unwilling dates. And, a couple years later, the women would show back up to the tribe with uh, young, young babies that were bigger and stronger and a little hairier than the regular kids. So, I mean, can all that just be fabricated legend? Can all the UFOs be fabricated? I can see how the Lost City would totally get, and I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying I can play devil's advocate and say, yes, there were 6 entrances, and this is where they were, but due to landslides and volcanic activity, boom, they got covered up, so it's buried in there somewhere. Or the city just got crushed under the weight because of landslides and stuff. But if you're going to go out, and if you are looking for these things, if you are looking for paranormal activity, I can be prepared for the worst. Thank you, God, you're okay, Brian. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. Like I said, most likely would have been found. It was. I definitely got quite a few warnings that day because, like I said, I got lost. And then the fun, it dawned on me to use my GPS for this person's address. So then, and found out that I was way away from where I thought I was. And I was walking in circles by retracing my steps. And then never even thought about the fact that I was using my GPS on the phone. And every once in a while, lose signal. So I keep walking until I got it back. Sometimes I went the right way, sometimes I didn't. And then the fact that as I got in my car, I used that to use on my stereo for music. I got like 50 yards down the road, so just, a couple minutes, if that. And then my phone died. So I was, 10 minutes away from not having that GPS. If that had happened half an hour sooner, I'd have been totally doinked out in the woods and screaming for help like a infant. So oops, yeah, Amy, oops is exactly. So, and if you're going someplace that's known for paranormal activity like this, and have a body cam on or something, make sure people know where you're at. Make sure you have check-in times. Um, and be mindful not only of what you're looking for, but what is actually there. There are bears, there are uh, mountain lions and things like that. Things that you are on the menu for if needed. So Joe and Bigfoot would have come to my rescue. I would hope so, but this is a different area. So, I hadn't given them all that peanut butter. They might have came and carried me out just to kick me out of the yard, don't come back. And you see, that's a big one, telling someone else. Yeah. And make sure you have check-in times. There's only been one time I can think of where I got so scared, and Lance Eby will back me up on this, with everything we had going on, that, and Susan, you're absolutely right, never hike alone, and I have been so guilty of doing that. And then I think about the fact, what if that ankle would have went, because I do have some hip issues, and every once in a while it'll tweak, and all I need is that to tweak stepping over a tree stump, and ouch. So yeah, and Mount Shasta would be a whole lot less forgiving. We're only talking, I was on flat ground. Imagine you're, and people do exactly what I did, and so all I can do is tell you not to do this and hope you don't do it too. Was following a groomed trail, and this was something else somebody reported, for a strange experience up there, where a father and son were hiking up a trail, and they got to a point where they looked off, and there was a ledge, and there were like three rocks that were like Stonehenge at the edge of the. Amy, haha, they don't know how friendly and generous is. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so they see these three rocks, and like Stonehenge, and they can't figure out, well, who put them there. And second, well, it's cool, but let's keep going. And so they keep going, and a little while later, they do a bunch of back and forth hiking this trail, and they find another ledge, and this one's got four of those, and they're like Stonehenge. They're not as big; they're only like 3-4 feet high. But the fact is, they're still shaped in like a tower, and placed along the cliff, and they can't figure out what's going on. And so they keep going, and then they get to a point where they know they can't go any further without climbing gear. So it's like, okay, well, time to turn around. And as they turn around, they look and they see what seems to be a fairly tall man wearing overalls, standing stone. He was wearing overalls, a denim shirt, and a straw hat. And he's just standing there staring at these rocks. And father and son can't figure out what's going on. And so the son starts staring real intently, and he realizes that he can't see any facial features on the guy, like John Cena. Can't see me. And so he's looking and he's looking, and then the next thing you know, all he hears is his father screaming, "Get back, get back, get back." And he's standing at the edge of that cliff looking down. He has no memory of going up to and trying to find that man in the straw hat. When his dad gets to him, his dad's like, "What the heck are you doing?" Other words, "What happened? What are you doing?" All I can tell you is I was standing there calling your name. "Hey, come back, come back. Where are you going? Come back." and you wouldn't even listen to me. You just kept walking toward the edge of the cliff. And so he explained he was looking for the man in the straw hat, and there was only two places to go, either up the trail or down the trail, or off the cliff. I guess that's the third option. But physically, up the trail or down the trail, and they look both ways and don't see him. So there was another example of some of the crazy paranormalness that goes on at Mount Shasta. What? Why is that such a magnet for everything? Is it because of the fact of the mountain range, and maybe there is some kind of lost civilization inside that, if there's lost civilization inside the mountain, they had to figure out how to light it. Maybe there's some kind of power source to use, like they talk about with the Egyptian crystals and stuff. And let me throw this up there one more time. My opinions, folks. So what's the cause? It's, and I'll be honest though, sometimes I like when mysteries don't get solved. It gives us something to keep shooting for. Just like I don't think the guy in the center of the screen is ever going to be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to science or to the general public because there's too much to lose. So, and I think more happens on Mount Shasta than what we hear about. Now, again, some of these stories came from Reddit, so we have to be careful. To me, Reddit is the modern day version of the National Enquirer or the National World News, which if you missed last week's show, go back and even just look at the headlines. Some of them are hilarious with the pictures. My favorite is Helen the Hooker Bigfoot. So, check that out. But so looking at Mount Shasta, I don't know about you. I don't even know if I want to go there. If it were just Bigfoot or just paranormal or just UFOs, yeah, that would be great. But trying to prepare for everything that happens up there would just be, way beyond my scope, and definitely as far as the hiking beyond my capabilities, you had better be prepared. But on a happy note, if you guys have hear about more Mount Shasta stuff, let me know, because this is one of my more favorite ones to talk about because of the fact of how much is centered in one locale. My vlog Sony Mount Shasta is a tourist attraction. Appalachian Mountains are too rugged and most of it's very unexplored. Yeah. It's a Native American sacred spot, or do they stay away? No, the Klamath are still there. At one point, that was a thriving town with cattle and, oh, believe it or not, camels during the gold rush, which is why for a while people were talked about are trying to say that some of these Bigfoot sightings back in the day were camels, because they actually imported camels during the gold rush, which I never knew until a couple of weeks ago. But obviously they're not going to survive the winter, so I can't believe a camel would still be running around out there. But when you deep dive these things, it's some of the crazier stuff is the real stuff that's actually going on. How many knew about live camels walking through Montana and California and um, the Oregon Trail in order to handle that gold rush, hoopla? So I want to thank everybody for coming. Amy that came in, my vlog, Standing Stones, Linda Thompson, Michelle, all you guys, Joey, Tom, everybody who showed up tonight. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all. And please, I know Justin got moved to a rehab facility. So continue prayers on his continued journey, and hopefully within a reasonable amount of time when he is fully recovered, he will be back here and share with us one of the most amazing journeys, physically and probably mentally and spiritually, that we're going to hear about for a while. So, prayers for his continued improvement. And until next week, from coast to coast around the world, love and appreciate y'all. Have a good night.
Number 1, triple target is 4, Bravo, 65.